Welcome to today's edition of InfluxDB Community Office Hours. I'm very excited to be joined today by Tim Hall, who is the VP of Products here at InfluxData. And in addition to myself, Caitlin Croft, we also have Anais, Samantha, and Michael, who are all part of the team here at InfluxData, and they're all here to answer your questions. So please feel free to post any questions you may have in either the Zoom chat or the Zoom Q&A. I will be monitoring both. And we'll get started in just a couple minutes here. So hopefully some more of our friends will join. We do host these sessions every month. So obviously the next session will be in September. It's usually the third Wednesday of the month. We were just super excited to have Tim talking, so we decided to move it up a week. Friendly reminders, we have, I know the team will go through this, but we do have the community Slack channel, we have the forums, we have a ton of resources online for our community members to learn more about InfluxDB. And I will remind everyone at the end as well, but we do have Influx Days North America coming up in the fall. It's a completely free event. It'll be completely virtual. Obviously, given the climate of 2020, it will be completely virtual. It's completely free. There is part of Influx Days, there is Flux training. There is a fee attached to that. And we keep the class pretty small because we want to make sure there's a really awesome student to teacher ratio. Well, without further ado, I am going to hand it off to Tim Hall.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. All right, let's get this train rolling. So I think today we're going to spend a bunch of time talking about where we're going with the open source edition. And we've been getting a ton of community feedback, and obviously that's not a surprise given how long the alpha and beta cycle has run. And that's actually one of the feedback points that we're getting is, hey guys, like, how come this has taken so long? And I want to be super transparent and clear with everybody about what's going on. We announced at Influx Days in June that our intention is to complete our beta cycle as quickly as possible here and get this to a general availability point. And we're targeting the end of Q3, but of course that could slip into Q4 just based on final rounds of feedback and typical software delivery processes. But our intent is to wrap this up. We have been very, very heavily focused on orienting towards offering a multi-tenanted cloud service that is now available across all three cloud providers. And as we've done that, the code obviously has been packaged and delivered out to the open source community as well. And one of the challenges that we have is we, over the last 7 years, have built a massive community following, and we are grateful and we are humble that you entrust us with your data and that you've been using us with our 1.x technology. What that means is we feel a great sense of responsibility in making sure that we have a path for you to move your production workloads from the 1.x environment to our latest and greatest additions of technology in as seamless a fashion as possible. And what that has meant is we've been hardening and testing and validating all of the new capabilities through our cloud environment first. And we intentionally have been targeting that at what we would call our net new users. And while we built a very large following, obviously, and a large community, there are more folks that we're obviously trying to attract to the platform. And as we attract them, getting them onto the latest and greatest bits has been sort of the way to go. But at this point, we feel like we've got the capabilities together, we understand how they're working, and it's time to harden this to a state where we're ready to bring your existing workloads across. But we have a small call to action here in that we need your help. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So first and foremost, one of the critical feedback points that we've gotten is that many of you have data that you're keeping around for a fairly long time. And as a result, changes at the storage engine layer are unwanted and undesirable. And one of the things that we did initially with InfluxDB 2.0 is we made a wholesale changes to the storage engine. This was intended to do a number of things, including making InfluxDB secure by default. So you cannot install and set up an InfluxDB 2.0 instance without providing an administrative username and password straight out of the gate. This was not the case with 1.x. And we also made it multi-tenant at the core. So another thing that you provide is an organization, if you will. That organization name is a logical separator that allows you to divide up where data lands and roles and responsibilities within those organizations. And in doing so, obviously that rippled out and made changes across the storage layer. However, in going through this sort of extended alpha and beta cycle, the feedback has been, please don't do that. Can you figure out a way to continue to deliver those capabilities and that segmentation, but continue to leverage our existing storage engine? And so that change, we've heard the feedback, and we have figured out a way to do this going forward. And so we're incorporating that feedback starting with InfluxDB 2.0 beta 17. So current release out as of the recording is beta 16. Everybody who's on a current alpha release or current beta release up to 16 is using what we would call the 2.0 original 2.0 storage engine that we packaged up. However, again, based on the feedback, what we are going to do is revert that storage layer back to the 1.x compatible mode. What this means for you from a breaking change perspective is that you will not be able to simply upgrade in place from beta 16 or prior to beta 17 and beyond. However, there is some good news here in that we will provide some instructions on how you can move your data from the existing alpha and beta instances into beta 17. There'll be some command line tools, extraction of the data into CSV format, and then you can play it back in to beta 17 and beyond. But what this really means for the community is that this will allow for a more seamless upgrade experience with no changes to your data or the data formats. And that should be welcome news to so many of you who provided feedback in this particular area. So we'll provide some clear instructions and guidance as we get to beta 17. This work is in flight as we are recording this now, and we expect to see beta 17 out here very, very shortly. And then where we need help, obviously, is on the next steps beyond this. So let's talk about what the proposed upgrade experience looks like. The upgrade is effectively making a copy of your wall and data directories. That's the first step. So the idea is we want you to continue to use the existing 1.x line for your production workloads and set up InfluxDB 2.0 in parallel. And again, this is sort of best practice. You wouldn't just sort of drop it in and fire up on a new major release. You're going to want to test and validate. But the way to do this is first copy your data and wall directories around to a new instance or machine. There is no more in-memory index. So by default, what we use is the time series index, which is the spill to disk index that we introduced back in InfluxDB 1.5. And so you'll generate, if you're not already using that, you'll need to generate those indices. Then there is a migration script that'll go through 4 simple and easy steps. The first one is just capturing that organization name, administrative username, and password. This is the same thing that you would experience if you were starting from scratch. And if any of you have tried any of the beta releases today, a quick set of information that we capture through that startup process. Second, the migration script will read your existing configuration and generate an equivalent 2.x configuration based on what you have turned on. And then we will read through that configuration and also highlight anything that may be currently unsupported. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then lastly, will provide you with a security script that extracts the usernames along with their permissions into something that you can use to migrate and create the appropriate security credentials within 2.0, and I'll talk about that in a second. So the process of running through these simple steps is that we'll give you some building blocks to then move from the preparation phase to the execution phase. And in the execution phase, the very first step will be to start your Influx 2.0 open source instance using the generated configuration details provided by the script. Then import the security script to create the appropriate tokens and their associated permissions. That then allows you to have the security context that you would provide out to the various clients, dashboards, and other users, agents such as Telegraf. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. You can update your CLI profiles. So InfluxDB 2.0 has the notion of profiles where you can decide, which instance you're connecting to. It's a new capability that we're pretty excited about. It really makes it easy to use a number of Influx instances at the same time, whether it's cloud, whether it's open source, whether it's multiple open source instances. You can switch between those profiles very, very easily at the command line. And then lastly is you take those security credentials and you place them in the various technologies that you have out there, and you're done. That's it. In particular, where we're needing some help, however, is in testing and validating those migration scripts. There are such a wide variety of deployments that are out there in the world today. We're looking for some volunteers to assist us in that process, and folks from the community put their hands up to help us. So next question is, okay, Tim, that sounded like pretty good. Like, are there any gotchas? And the answer is, of course, like no good technology is gonna roll out a whole new major release without some caveats. So let's talk about a couple things to note. The first one is continuous queries. There is no notion of continuous query as part of InfluxDB 2.0. However, what has been included is a complete task system that will run Flux script. So in the same way that you could think of how you access your data in 1.x using InfluxQL, but then you had to use either continuous queries that are based on InfluxQL or go out to Capacitor to build a downsampling task. All of that now is the same language on the same platform and same subsystems. So you use Flux script to define how you're gonna explore and work with your data, whether it's building a dashboard cell, whether it's building a task for downsampling or other activities, etc. All is driven through Flux. And the continuous query engine effectively is replaced by a task system, which allows for you to build, schedule, and execute tasks. So if you have downsampling tasks, you'll be converting those into continuous queries. And again, as part of the migration script, we're gonna alert you if we see continuous queries and that you're taking advantage of them. You can very easily extract those continuous queries from your 1.x instance by issuing a show continuous queries meta query. That will give you the list of what's there, and we'll work together with our documentation team and obviously some community members to try to provide a number of examples of how you might think about converting your continuous queries to tasks. So look for that. But if you rely very, very heavily on continuous queries, this is something to note and be aware of. You'll need to re-implement those as tasks, and you may want to do that in a more stepwise approach. Now, second gotcha is not all platforms will be available at once. What do I mean, platforms? We will be delivering this initially for Linux and Linux-based systems for various flavors, including Darwin for Mac OS. But we will pause on Windows and ARM support. So those will not be available at the GA point. So keep that in mind. And again, as we get closer to the GA date, we'll try to provide better visibility into when Windows and ARM support will roll out next. It is absolutely our intention to do so. However, just trying to getting all this to a defined landing point is sort of where we're driving towards. So we're going to do that for the Linux community first. And then finally, for those that are using Capacitor, and we know there are a lot of you out there that are super fans of Capacitor, there is no subscription mechanism in InfluxDB 2.0. And so I'll talk a little bit later about what's available for continuing to use Capacitor, both for batch tasks and stream tasks. But it's important to sort of highlight that. So to try to put this in a little more visual format, let's suggest that Q4 is sort of the rough target at the moment, where we'd like to have everything packaged up from a 2.0 open source perspective, the UI and all the existing APIs. Obviously, Flux support is the way that you access all of the data, whether it's tasks, dashboard cells, or others. We will be landing the 1.x read and write APIs in a compatibility mode, including InfluxQL support. This is super critical for all of you that have dashboard tools, or you've written other things based on client libraries, so that you can move those workloads over as quickly as possible with a minimum disruption. So there's no rewriting of dashboards, there's no changes. The only thing you should have to do is change those security credentials and the endpoint. That's it. And the read and write APIs will continue to function as you expect with 1.x. Obviously, the upgrade tooling that we mentioned, running those various CLI scripts. This 1.x storage engine will be in place, supporting what effectively is a drop-in kind of in-place upgrade. Obviously, you're going to copy your data over, so you have a copy of it. And we also already have a 2.x monitoring template. Templates is a new feature and capability inside of InfluxDB 2.0. And if you're not aware of it, what it allows you to do is package up all your assets and artifacts that you've defined in the platform, whether they be things like Telegraf configurations, dashboards, tasks, and other things. And it allows you to move those around. And you can even do it in a GitOps style, which has been super valuable even for us internally to use. There is a community templates repo that Michael Hall actually is the curator of, and we welcome additional template submissions if you have expertise in a particular area that you'd like to share with others. Post-GA, we'll go through a prioritization process, again, for platforms like Windows and ARM64, and other things that we may have missed in terms of the initial delivery. We have already delivered a raft of Flux performance optimizations to our cloud instance. And we've achieved 10x performance, I would say, at the minimum for many of those Flux queries, and we'll continue to deliver those to the open source community as well. From a migration perspective, we're primarily targeting the open source community today to talk about how open source users can move from 1x to 2x, but we have a large number of folks that are interested in sort of stopping managing all of this themselves and to use either our free tier in the cloud or go to a paid tier based on their sort of longer term desires. And so we'll talk through a little bit after GA about how to take your existing data and do a bulk data migration from open source to cloud if that's your desire. And then last but not least, I know some of you are using the Prometheus remote write endpoint, and if you are, we'll look at prioritizing that post-GA as well. Now, associated with the Prometheus remote write endpoint, there are a number of other sort of native ingestion APIs that exist, and this is documented under the supported protocols section of our documentation. This includes support for Graphite, CollectD, OpenTSDB, and UDP. Those are currently not planned to be added to the open source or the cloud editions of 2.0. Effectively, our recommendation is to use Telegraf as the means for translating all of those protocols into line protocol effectively, which is what InfluxDB supports directly. So if you have questions about those or how you might tackle that, please reach out to us and we can talk through that in more detail. Of course, if we've made a horrible mistake here and you're like, this is the no-go, we want to hear that feedback too. Please let us know. Like, we're not suggesting we got this 100% right, but this is currently what the plan is. And Telegraf already provides support to translate these different protocols. And so definitely take advantage of that. Okay, so our goal is get to the GA point, prioritize these pieces, and continue to provide a monthly update for our open source community users that based on your feedback. And so that feedback is critical. Definitely use our channels that we have available to you. And I know Michael's going to highlight all of the places where you can land and connect with Influxers. All right, so it sounds easy enough. What do we need help with? We have such a large community, and we want to make sure that we deliver the best possible upgrade experience. And so we really need help from community members who are willing to lean in and help test these various scripts and the end-to-end process, and then provide feedback on the experience. And for those of you who are willing to put up your hands and participate in the process, we can probably arrange some swag to be sent your way. So let us know. That's really the key. So drilling down a little bit more, for those of you who are Telegraf users, if you have started using Telegraf 1.9, and by the way, we're up to 1.15 now, we did something a little bit sneaky, which is we started including the InfluxDB 2.0 output plugin, starting with Telegraf 1.9. This is over a year and a half ago. And why did we do that? Because we knew that getting data in is one of the first steps in using the platform. And so if you're on 1.9 or above, that plugin is already available in your deployed Telegraf instances. And once you have InfluxDB 2.0 stood up and running, all you need to do is configure that output plugin, and you'll start feeding data into your 2.0 instance. Now, many of you might have things that are already out there running, and your option is to continue to use the 1.x output plugin and just change the configuration to use the InfluxDB username and token per the documentation, and that will leverage the compatibility API as part of InfluxDB 2.0 open source, and send that across. Of course, because we said we want you to have a mostly in place upgrade experience, one of the best practices is to do what we call dual write. Continue to have your agents send the data to your existing production instance, and you do that by simply configuring a second output plugin. And again, you can maintain your existing systems and setups, gain confidence that 2.0 is ready for prime time, and run. So all of those options are available to you. Now we get questions, more detailed questions about capacitor. Open source users can continue to use capacitor with InfluxDB open source 2.0. That's great, but there are some scenarios to highlight. First of all, you'll need to change the configuration similar to what you're doing in terms of the URL and in terms of the username and token setup that's typically used now as part of 2.0. If you're using batch style tasks, many of you are, it will continue to use both the read and the write APIs as part of 1.x. Just the way you expect. Once you change those security credentials, everything should work from a batch task perspective just fine. Second, for stream tasks, there is not a subscription API as part of InfluxDB 2.0. That's okay. The best practice is actually to feed the data in both to InfluxDB and capacitor directly. And doing so allows you to continue to use your stream tasks as is. You can, and then if the output was to write some of that data back to InfluxDB, again, the write compatible API is there. You should be able to use that. And then if you're using other mechanisms to feed data in, again, you're in this sort of dual write scenario. If that's too many changes, again, you could use Telegraf as an intermediate layer to capture that data and do the dual writes for you. That is another best practice. Okay, so stream style tasks will work, but you got to feed the data in directly to both InfluxDB and to capacitor. Now, again, there's a task subsystem up underneath 2.0. And the idea is for your batch tasks, you can look at converting those into Flux scripts and use the task subsystem, and then stepwise retire those things as they're working effectively for you, and get that single instance executing all of that for you. And then on the chronograph front, for those of you that are using chronograph, and we still continue to see about a 20% increase quarter over quarter in terms of our chronograph community growth, which is awesome. So it really tells us that you're enjoying the experience of chronograph, which we appreciate. All you got to do is create a data source, connect it with 2.0. This works today with cloud, and it'll work with open source when we reach the GA point. All you got to do is use the compatibility endpoint, put in the new credentials, and your existing dashboards will continue to work. However, one caveat: the administrative features and capabilities of chronograph, things like creating or changing the dashboards, or sorry, the databases, retention policies, adding users and permissions, that will disappear. And the reason why, obviously, is because those APIs are not exposed for consumption by chronograph. You will perform those actions within the native UI, obviously using your administrative credentials inside of InfluxDB 2.0. Okay, pretty straightforward. And then there's this little thing called Grafana that a bunch of people use. You'll need to upgrade to Grafana 7.1 or greater. And then you'll follow much the similar path as chronograph, which is creating a data source or modifying your existing data source and connect it to 2.0 using those compatibility endpoints and all your existing dashboards. And those will continue to function. And we got a question about dual write to capacitor for stream tasks. I can assume a one-day retention policy to capacitor while InfluxDB has much longer. Yeah, so capacitor doesn't have any persistence. So effectively what happens is when you feed the data through capacitor, if there's no output out the back end, the data just drops out, which is fine. You're writing the data to Influx for long-term persistence. And so effectively the stream task is whatever whatever contextually you want to hold in memory, you define that as part of the stream task itself. In some cases, people are doing stream processing for anomaly detection in real time. And so in order to do that, obviously you define a window of time under which you're making that evaluation. In some cases, there's no write output. You're just raising an alarm or an alert through one of the alert handlers when you detect that instance. In other cases, you may be doing some post-processing, and then you may want to write back the results to a different location within InfluxDB. And so that both of those mechanisms should continue to work. All right, that's it. So those are the technologies. We'd love to get some help. We're trying to be as clear and transparent as possible. We've written up a big document, Michael, that I think we're gonna share out obviously with the community members through Slack and other means. Yeah, we want to talk. Let's engage.
Yeah, it looks like Chris is interested in helping us. So I'll send an intro email with Chris, Michael, and Tim, just so you guys can get the ball rolling on that.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, Michael, did you want to say anything more about the Slack channel or the forums?
Yeah, I mean, these office hours are a great way to hear about what we're doing and ask questions, but we're also available basically 24/7 on both our Slack and our community forums, both of which are linked here. So if you want to help out testing the migration from 1.x to 2.0 or just get started using 2.0 or any other software that we build, you can join us in either of these. Some good channels in the Slack are the community channel, which you'll be added to by default. And that's just where we talk about anything related to community or what our community is working on. So feel free to join that and just have a chat with us. If you're using InfluxDB 2 specifically, the V2 channel is dedicated to that. We also have a Flux channel for questions about writing Flux scripts or how the language works. And then Tim mentioned templates are a big new feature in 2.0, and they have their own channel on the Slack too, where you can find out what templates are available, how to use them, and more importantly, how to write your own from your current configurations. And then we also have the forums if you are more comfortable on that than a live chat. In there, we've got an InfluxDB 2 category, again, specifically for questions or support related to InfluxDB 2, and also a FluxLang category for questions related to Flux and Flux scripts.
I think Michael will create a upgrades right? Probably a Slack channel specifically to gather feedback or provide tips and tricks as we continue to move down the track. So look for that one to appear as well.
And the templates, like InfluxDB templates, people have fun with them. It's not just about, for example, like I know there's like a Kubernetes one and there's a bunch of more serious ones, but there's also fun ones like monitoring Fortnite. So if you're doing something fun, we're all stuck at home. Feel free to, if you're interested in creating a template, I'm sure Michael will be able to help you through the process. More the merrier. One of our Influx aces, he's contributed a lot, and he also had fun and created the Fortnite one. So it's not, it can be fun as well.
Yeah, what I love about templates is, not only can you build really cool things with InfluxDB, but with templates now you can share them with other people. So if you've got a cool game monitoring setup, or you've got hydroponics that you're monitoring water level and temperature, instead of just showing screenshots of that, you can actually share the whole configuration, and other people can go and install that on their own InfluxDB instance and start using it. It's almost like an application for InfluxDB.
And we're all here to help. If you're working on something and you think it could be a template, feel free to ping any one of us in Slack or in the forums, and we're happy to help you through the process or connect you with the right people. All right. As always, we like to remind our community of just a few reminders. We have the community forum. So the forum is a great place for you to go and either ask questions or even answer questions. Just because you don't think you know a lot about InfluxDB, I'm sure there's questions out there that other people have that you might have already figured out the answer to. So be sure to check it out, share ideas, and so it's a great place to get your questions answered. And as previously mentioned, we have the community Slack. It's super easy to join. We're all on there, internal people as well as fantastic community members. So be sure to check that out. Tim, do you want to go to the next slide, please? All right. Yeah. So it's really easy. All you have to do is go to influxdata.com/Slack, and you'll be able to join the workspace and start hanging out and, posting GIFs, reacting to things, and answering questions. Next, we also have the InfluxDB subreddit. Just be aware this is one of the least active channels, but, we get that there are people who are on Reddit, and we are there, but it's just less active. Next, just some friendly reminders, announcements, and resources. We have our virtual time series meetups. Obviously, this year they are all virtual. So the next one will be in September sometime. We are hoping, I know we were supposed to have one about monitoring your barbecue. That unfortunately had to be delayed, so that'll probably be in October, but it'll be super fun, and I know we'll have a really great session in September as well. We have these community office hours once a month, and the next session will be on Wednesday, September 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific. So feel free to come back. If you have new questions or just want to learn more, be sure to register for the September session. Next, we have the community showcase. It's a great place to go and learn about what other people in the community are doing with InfluxDB. So you can find out related events, webinars, articles, blogs. We love discovering what our community is doing with InfluxDB, and then if we find it, we will post it in the showcase. So for example, yesterday we had a webinar on a guy who's using InfluxDB and Grafana to monitor data coming from his boats. So he pulls in the data into InfluxDB and then visualizes it in Grafana. And I found him just because he had created a blog post on his own website that we found and posted it on our showcase. So we're always searching high and low for our community members and discovering all the cool things that you are doing with InfluxDB. And finally, we have Influx Days coming up in November. So on October 27th and 28th, we have the hands-on virtual Flux training. It is the Flux training, there is a fee to it, like I said, but it's just to keep the student to instructor ratio really good. You know, we know that there's going to be lots of questions, so we want to make sure that there's a good ratio. It's a really fun class. I've sat in on it now twice. The instructors are fantastic. They're actually trained, they're data scientists, so they really understand it, and they're Italian, so the example that they use is a pizza oven. So you can learn Flux slang while talking about an IoT, a pizza oven that has IoT sensors in it. So talking about the melting point of cheese and all that sort of fun stuff. And then about a week and a half later will be Influx Days, which will be all the live keynote sessions, which will be on November 10th and 11th. And that part will be completely free. It'll start at 9 a.m. Pacific, as this is our North America edition. Obviously, wherever you are in the world, please feel free to join. We'll be super excited to have you there. If you've been on a webinar with me, you've probably heard me say this. I thought it was really cool. At the June session that was technically our London Influx Days, we had attendees from 6 different continents. So I'm excited to see where we have community members join for the November session. So be sure to come to that. It'll be a fantastic event. Tim will be speaking there again. So if you aren't tired of hearing from him, definitely come and listen to him talk about the roadmap. Chris, since there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat, I'm going to actually unmute you, allow you to talk, and if you want to talk with the team here. So you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Not sure I even have a microphone hooked up.
We can hear you.
Oh, that's a scary thought. I probably can't say a whole lot from the seat. Look, you guys are doing some really fun stuff and trying to be an early adopter of Flux. I'm trying to push it to its limits, and I think I've thrown a few questions that way where I can't get day offsets working for one part of my Flux query versus others. I'm sure the whole audience doesn't want to hear about this, but I'll think about formulating some very specific questions to get your guys' attention at some point.
Sounds good, Chris. And like I said, I will connect you. Obviously, it looks like you already know Tim, but I'll connect you with Michael as well over email so you guys can start working on that together on testing out the migration process. This session has been recorded. It will be available for replay on YouTube later today. Once it's live on YouTube, I will post it in the community Slack so that you guys can all find it for replay. Tim is asking if you have used the align time function. I think that's directed at Chris.
Am I vocal again?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Scary thought. The align time doesn't allow me necessarily to query something from a day offset. So what I'm trying to accomplish is, I want to compare today's data to something that I populate from a drop-down dashboard variable. And that might be 1 day offset, 2 day offset, 7 day offset. And so the interactivity of using the day offset, I've had success where I can populate my entire query with that day offset, but not a combination of no offset and some other day's offset.
Got it.
Through either Flux, InfluxQL, Grafana using Flux, Grafana using InfluxQL. Like I'm struggling there.
Yeah, no, you should be able to do that with Flux and setting up 2 different. What you would do is you're going to use variables to set up 2 different data sets. So the first variable is whatever the source data is that you want to compare against. And then the second data set will be your offset data. And then you can run whatever comparison that combines the 2. And we can definitely, if if you drop into the community Slack, I bet Scott Anderson or someone else can, Anais or someone can help you with that kind of setup.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Yeah, align time is kind of a neat thing where you can sort of create a zero starting point, right, for time series data that comes in. So this has been pretty useful in the context of the COVID situation where we're tracking cases and you want to know at what point did, you know, a country, a geo, a region, a locale have, let's say, 1,000 cases. And then that becomes the zero time. And then from there, what you're doing is you're looking at the interval of growth over a standard time dimension to see the difference between case growth from one to another. But it's a function we never had before. So that's why I was bringing it up. But yeah, I realize, Chris, it might not be useful in your particular use case.
Perfect. Chris, did you have any more questions for the panelists today? All right, it looks like we're all set. So thank you everyone for joining today's InfluxDB Community Office Hours. Like I mentioned before, the session has been recorded. It will be available on YouTube later. And I'll also post Tim's slides so that everyone can review them at their leisure. And I will post all of this in the community Slack later today once it's available. Thank you everyone for joining, and I look forward to seeing everyone next month on September 16th for the next session. And of course, hope to see you at Influx Days in November. Thank you everyone.